Last weekend, David and I took a short trip up to Maine to visit with his mother, Betsy, and her partner, Harold. Every summer, Harold plants vegetables in his raised bed gardens, which he then cans so that they can eat them through the winter. He puts up Swiss chard and spinach and Brussels sprouts and pickles and carrots usually. But this winter there will be no carrots. A few years back, Harold began using seed tape to plant some of the vegetables because it's supposed to be easier with the tape in that you don't have to be bending over, thinning out your carrots in the garden. So he followed the instructions this year as he has for the last few years, but this year something went wrong and not a single carrot sprouted from any of the rows. Now, I don't, maybe the tape was too dried out or he didn't water at just the right time, but despite all his good effort, he and Betsy won't be enjoying any carrots this winter. And when he told me that story, I thought to myself, well, isn't that how it goes sometimes? We spend a lot of energy and time preparing something and getting the conditions just right, watching carefully, dutifully caring, and then nothing comes of it. I've tried to explain to the kids on our visits over to the Emerson Garden this summer that though planting seeds may seem easy, it sometimes takes some work to get them to grow. The parable of one of the tiniest seeds, the mustard seed, is well known to most of us. It's a metaphor that is inspiration to many, including poets, which is why I've included 2 poems about the mustard seed as part of our worship this morning. They're in the lavender insert in the bulletin. Mary Oliver and Denise Levertov are well known for their practice of reflecting and writing about faith and religion and capturing, as many poets do, something of the essence of this particular parable in powerful and yet sparse ways. So you just heard there Mary Oliver's poem, What I've Learned So Far, spoken by students from Marquette University. And it's actually a video, but it's rather a lot of work to set up our video screen for such a brief offering, though someday I hope we'll be able to share videos more easily. But the video, during the video, the little musical interlude part there, you would have seen the students working at a number of different organizations. And as the poet says, it's the only way to truly be passionate about something, to labor in its cause. And no doubt those students would wholeheartedly agree, as I'm sure most of you would too. I'm convinced that Jesus would feel the same. I know that because he demonstrated his passion about a great number of things during his lifetime. He did not shy away from difficult topics or fear asking questions about practices or laws he thought were unjust. Neither should we. He tried in so very many situations to show people how to treat each other in ways that were life-giving and hospitable instead of judgmental and exclusive. I'm not saying that Jesus never got angry or upset. We see some clear examples of that in the stories we read in the Bible. But I do believe that Jesus spoke with passion, in particular when people were being mistreated, excluded, or when those in power abused the power they had. In those cases, Jesus spoke clearly and passionately about ways to rectify or make right what was wrong. But Jesus' adult ministry was very short in the greater scheme of things, perhaps only 10 or 15 years long. That's not a lot of time to change a system or right past wrongs. And so he spent a lot of time planting seeds. He planted seeds of thought, prayer, and words in many people. Seeds which have been replanted in us just by reading about his life and words. And though some of us might be able to identify what has grown in us over the years, it remains to be seen which seeds have yet to grow and which may never take root in us. Jesus knew we couldn't take in all his teachings at once. He knew, even if, as he was telling stories and healing people, that we would not understand all that was happening. I believe this is why he gathered the disciples and encouraged them to create a community of believers. I'm convinced that Jesus knew these seeds he was planting would need to be tended. They would need to be cared for and nurtured by many people, by people with different skills and different gifts, not just ourselves, so that we would someday see them bear fruit, and then we would understand what he meant. It's not possible for us to answer the question, what would Jesus do, to every issue or concern that we face today. He simply did not face some of the increasingly complex ethical and moral conundrums we encounter today. But what is very easy to see is that he was extremely clear on the basics of how we should treat each other. Jesus planted seeds of values and ideas. He planted prayers and questions deep inside us so that they could germinate, grow, and come to flourish in time. Jesus' seeds, like so many other seeds, have great potential, and yet the conditions must be right for them to grow. The second poem I offer you today speaks to another reality about seed planting. The growing of a seed, this metaphor we find in the parable of the mustard seed, is often misunderstood. This is not surprising. The parables Jesus offers can certainly be confusing or esoteric. And though we, like the disciples, long for simple, clear answers, life is so rarely like that. Instead, the hard work and sifting and sorting through what we encounter in our lives, though sometimes complex and overwhelming, is exactly the work we are called to do. Sometimes it feels so messy and difficult that even the most basic realizations or truths somehow elude us. But the most important values that we share, planted throughout our lives by God, by Jesus, by our parents and mentors, grow, hopefully, in ways that bloom into a full and healthy faith, though Levertov maintains that this is miraculous and rare. Here's her poem on the Parables of the Mustard Seed by Denise Levertov. Whoever saw the mustard plant, wayside weed or tended crop, grow tall as a shrub, let alone a tree full of shade and nests and songs? Acres of yellow, not a bird of the air in sight. No, he who knew the west wind brings the rain, the south wind thunder, who walked the field paths running his hand along wheat stems to glean those intimate milky kernels, good to break on the tongue, was talking of miracle. The seed within us, so small we take it for worthless, a mustard seed, dust, nothing. Glib generations mistake the metaphor, not looking at fields and trees, not noticing paradox. Mountains remain unmoved. Faith is rare, he must have been saying, prodigious, unique, one infinitesimal grain divided like loaves and fishes, as if from a mustard seed a great shade tree grew. That rare, that strange, the kingdom a tree, the soul a bird, a great concourse of birds at home there, wings among yellow flowers, the waiting kingdom of faith, the seed waiting to be sown. Our faith grows from knowing stories, from sharing our own and listening to the stories of others who have come before us and walked through this world exploring, asking, and knowing how we are made, by whom, and for what purposes. Seeds of faith are planted with love. They are watered by the values we share and celebrate as people of God. The seeds of our faith are tended by compassion, hospitality, kindness, and generosity. What grows in a young person of faith, if conditions are right, is fruit of all kinds, a garden of values that support growth and call all of us, to be passionate about so many things that matter. Right now is the time of year when I am considering what kinds of seeds to plant in the earth of our children as we lay out our Sunday school curriculum and our youth group calendars. This program year, we will have 8 Food for the Soul dinner worship services. That's up from 4 and 6 over the last 2 years, respectively. We will focus on 8 values that are seeds, all of them serving to assist in growing even more aspects of our character and spiritual practice in the youngest in our church. We will read stories from the Bible, listen to great children's books, create images and projects, offer prayers, share meals together, and ask questions about 8 values: kindness, honesty, creativity, hospitality, balance, compassion, thankfulness, and adventure. Parker Palmer, the writer and founder of the Center for Courage and Renewal, said this: "We are born with a seed of selfhood that contains the spiritual DNA of our uniqueness and encoded birthright knowledge of who we are, why we are here, and who and how we are related to others. We may abandon that knowledge as the years go by, but it never abandons us." I'm grateful that no matter if we are lousy gardeners, if we forget to take care of ourselves, there are always others who step in to care for us when we do not or cannot do it ourselves. I began this sermon by telling you about Harold's misadventures with seed tape. It served to remind me that sometimes, despite our best efforts, it seems no fruit comes from what we've planted. Seeds are fragile. They're subject to damage from cold or heat, from too much water or too little water. Animals like to eat them, and birds like to carry them away. I said that conditions need to be right for seeds to grow. Beet, beans, potatoes, and pumpkins need careful tending in the same ways that creativity, gratitude, and balance also need to be tended, though they sometimes do best when allowed to grow wild. And yet, as our parable points out, in that wildness, weeds threaten to overtake the garden of our lives. There is drought of inspiration or purpose, and torrential rains of sadness or loneliness, and overabundance of fear or frustration. There are many things that can prevent or obscure our growth. You may be aware that there is a place called the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, located halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole. It's designed to be a backup of the backup for seed vaults around the world. In other words, there are 1,750 seed storage facilities all over the world right now, and Svalbard is a backup for those locations. In the case of wars like in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, or in the case of natural disasters, as in Indonesia recently, when local seed vaults may be damaged or destroyed by fire or flood, Svalbard can send native seeds back to an area to be regrown, to repopulate the ecosystem and the local seed vaults of an entire country. Apparently, the seeds in the Svalbard vault from Syria were recently sent back there so that recultivation could begin again, at least in some parts of the country. I think our churches are seed vaults of a type. They are places where the seeds of our Christian values and practices can be safely stored should they need to be reintroduced to an individual or a community after a time of crisis. I think that words and images, like seeds, work their way into the soil of our lives and take root. I think all the ways we worship together, the prayers we say and offer, the liturgies we share, the images Martin and I tried to draw in your minds are ways of planting seeds in each other so that with the right care, hard work, and experience, these ideas, these values grow in us and support our efforts to change not just our own lives, but the lives of every person on this earth. The good news is that Jesus shared the parable of the mustard seed to let us know that unexpected things grow from very small seeds. So be patient with yourself, or your child, or your parent. Keep tending the garden, watering the seeds, occasionally pulling a few weeds. It will all come together, or it won't. At least not in the ways you think. Whatever happens, know that God's work is being done in you, whether you know it, or like it, or not. The Seed Vault we keep here in our church is held in trust among the community of friends and neighbors here, and is designed to be a backup for the backup in times of crisis. When we are lost in fear or despair or confusion, when anger is the overriding emotion that we feel, when the news of the day feels overwhelming, if you can manage to just get here, just be present, and then let the words work the earth of your heart, you can be cared for, and your faith can be sustained and grow. Come here to restore and renew your purpose and your passion. Come here when you are feeling low. Come here when you'd rather be sleeping in. Come here when you have many other pressing things to do. Come here in times of plenty to make deposits of new seeds, so that when you need to recultivate those seeds of compassion or creativity or mission or meditation, you'll find them in abundance, whatever you need. I believe that kindness is a seed that grows toward light and action, as Mary Oliver describes. I believe that the kingdom of God is a tree grown from a mustard seed, big enough for birds of every kind to flock together and rest in its branches, as Denise Levertov describes. The kingdom of God is a great mustard tree that drops even more seeds, some of which will take root and grow again, others that will feed the souls, the birds that gather in its branches. Rare and beautiful, faith is a source of strength that we can cultivate in each other. It is something we can share from one generation to the next, something we can hold dear in this place, but also take out into the world and offer. Our seed vault is deep and safe. With God's help, we can go out from this place into the world and make a way, even when the way is difficult. Thanks be to God.